Add more detail, because we're not done. Question 1. Which hormones are steroidal? Which ones? There are 3 listed. Okay, we have aldosterone, which is a mineralocorticoid. Cortisone, which is a glucocorticoid, and testosterone, which we'll put testosterone. So you have the mineralocorticoids, the glucocorticoids, and the sex hormones. Find the ones that say steroidal. Okay, so why do we care? So let's go back to Biology 112, that distant land you remember nothing from. What made something a steroid chemically?
Steroid.
True, which means it can do what?
Dissolve in lipids.
Say that loud. Own it. What does it do?
Lipid soluble.
Lipid soluble. So steroids mean they can dissolve into a lipid. They are hydrophobic, right? Nonpolar, all those words from 112. So if you're a steroid hormone, you're made out of fat. Therefore, you have fat characteristics. Tell me what else you learned in 112 was made out of fat. It's around a cell. The membrane, right? The phospholipid bilayer. So now I'm going to show you an animation that shows you why steroidal or not matters, because it changes how the cell and the hormone interact. I'll get this on the screen.
Steroid hormones are not water soluble. They travel in the blood attached to protein carriers. When steroid hormones arrive at their target cells, they dissociate from their protein carriers and pass through the plasma membrane of the cell. Some steroid hormones bind to specific receptor proteins in the cytoplasm and then move as a hormone receptor complex into the nucleus.
Let's back up and make sure we got that. So let's figure out first off, why does it need to be in a carrier molecule to get to the cells? Because it's hydrophobic. Remember, it's a fat, it's a lipid. Remember Biology 112, lipids don't like water. There's water in your blood. So the last place a steroid wants to be is in the bloodstream. So you literally have to carry it to the organ. So it's going to leave your adrenal gland, enter the blood in a carrier molecule, and end up at the target. So it's carried along. But because it's fat soluble, it wants to get into this membrane as best it can. So when that lets go, like right here, the steroid wants in really bad. It wants to join its fat buddies and go through here. Right? So it's going to enter my cell directly. So sometimes you'll see people call this direct action or direct steroidal action. They mean it goes right in. And you know that from the hospital. You put hydrocortisone cream on someone's skin, and what does it do? It soaks right in because it's steroidal based. It can go through the keratinized layers of your skin. If you put water-based liquid on someone's skin, it doesn't go anywhere, right? You learned that in 231. So the concept is steroids can be soaked through fat into the cells, right?
Some steroid hormones bind to specific receptor proteins in the cytoplasm and then move as a hormone receptor complex into the nucleus. Other steroids travel directly into the nucleus before encountering their receptor proteins, not shown.
Of course not.
The hormone receptor protein, activated by binding to the hormone, is now able to bind to specific regions of the DNA. These DNA regions are known as the hormone response elements.
No one cares.
The binding of the hormone receptor complex has a direct effect on the level of transcription at that site. Messenger RNA, mRNA, is produced, which then codes for the synthesis of specific proteins.
So, if I have testosterone in my body, which in theory I did before my kids, right? It goes into my cells, tells my cells to grow more hair and all that by changing the gene expression inside my nucleus. So it's affecting how your genes express, going directly into the nucleus and telling you to do more or less gene action. So direct set pathway, steroidal pathway. Make sense? So steroids go right on in and change how your DNA is being coded. So if I do the non-steroidal option, what do you think is going to be different about the animation? It's going to be a big difference.
No carrier.
No carrier because they can float in the plasma.
It's going to have to be transported across the membrane.
They need a protein in the membrane. Very good. Let's see if that's true. Which is this one? No. This one. So because non-steroids do not like fat, they don't want to go through the membrane. So hence, I need a receptor molecule to receive them, to hear them.
When a signal molecule, such as epinephrine, binds to a cell surface receptor protein, it activates a G protein on the inside of the cell.
So remember, that was epinephrine, non-steroidal amine. That's not a steroid. So it can't get in on its own, so it knocks on the door, use an analogy, of the receptor. The receptor then does something inside. So the hormone will never enter this cell. It's non-steroidal. It'll stay on the outside and tell the inside of the cell what to do. The steroids go in. Right? So this epinephrine will never enter that cell. It'll simply stay there.
Binds to a cell surface receptor protein. It activates a G protein on the inside of the cell. The G protein then stimulates adenylyl cyclase to produce large amounts of cyclic AMP from ATP within the cell. The cyclic AMP then binds to and activates a target protein, such as alpha kinase, which adds phosphates to specific proteins in the cell. The effect of this phosphorylation depends on the identity of the cell and the proteins that are phosphorylated.
So some cells get turned on, some get turned off, some go faster, slower. So the difference for your quiz is that non-steroidals have to have a receptor that's going to activate the cell, but they don't go in. Steroids don't need a receptor on the outside. They can go directly in and change the expression. All right. Make sense? So next week we're going to talk about diabetes. You're going to hear me talk about receptors because insulin is non-steroidal. So you're going to have receptors for insulin, whereas testosterone would not need a receptor for insulin on your cell. Make sense? So knowing those differences is important in your healthcare to know which ones can do what with or without receptors. Make sense? Okay, so that's the difference between steroidal or not in terms of their mechanism. Let's go back to the magic page of doom here and do question 2. Which hormones have antagonists? Okay, that word again. Antagonist means different things. So last time you learned it meant a blocker, right? It can mean that, but in this case, antagonist means opposite. In this context, an antagonistic hormone means it does the opposite of what the other one does. So I want you to look at your chart and start telling me the hormones have an opposite to them. Calcitonin, I heard. And what's its opposite called? PTH. One raises blood calcium, one lowers it. One makes more bone, one removes it. So they're antagonistic. What's the other one I heard?
Insulin.
Insulin and glucagon. One lowers, one raises. They're antagonistic. They do the opposite of each other. There's one more pair. ANP and aldosterone. Yes, corticoids. Aldosterone raises salt. ANP lowers salt, sodium. So ANP and aldosterone, mineralocorticoid and ANP, to be more precise. So these are antagonistic hormones. They do the opposite of each other. So these have direct antagonists. Make sense? Okay, now we're going to do number 3, tropic hormones. Okay, in this context, tropic hormones have a definition. They have a meaning. So it goes from one endocrine gland to another. So this is a hormone that travels between glands, from one gland to another. So looking at your chart, name for me some tropic hormones, ones that go from one gland to another gland. Look on the very first page.
Thyroid stimulating?
Thyroid stimulating. Let's prove that. Where's it made?
Anterior pituitary.
Anterior pituitary, which is an endocrine gland. Where's it go?
Thyroid.
Thyroid, which is another endocrine gland. So therefore it's tropic. Give me another one. Even in the name. ACTH. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Made where? Anterior pituitary. Goes where?
Adrenal cortex.
Adrenal cortex. So it goes from one gland to another gland. Give me another one. Now, prolactin goes to mammary glands, which are not endocrine, so that wouldn't count. Which one? LH. Goes from my anterior pituitary to my gonads, which are endocrine glands. They make sex hormones. And then the last one, FSH. Goes from my anterior pituitary to my gonads. These are tropic hormones. They go from one gland to another. Where are they all made? Very good. Made by the anterior pituitary. So they're all made or sourced at the anterior pituitary. Those are the tropic hormones. All right, last question of the night is number 4. We need to know releasing hormones. All right, releasing hormones cause the release or the activation of tropic hormones. So releasing hormones cause tropic hormones to go, the activation or the release. They're not on your chart anywhere. But we're going to do some abbreviations for them. There are going to be 3 we're going to list. First one is called TRH. Then we have CRH, and then GnRH. Can anyone hazard me a guess what the RH stands for?
Releasing hormone.
Releasing hormone. So if you see something with an RH like that, that means releasing hormone. The first letter tells you what it's releasing. T's, C's, or GN's. What do you think the T stands for in TRH? Look right here. TSH. So it turns on and activates TSH. So the thyroid releasing hormone turns on thyroid stimulating hormone. The T's match up. Tell me what you think the C, can you find a C on here somewhere? Number 2. So I'm going to activate ACTH, cortisol, or cortisone. Cortico. So the letter tells you which of these it's picking from. Now the problem, you have 1 left, but there's 2 things. Gonads. GN stands for gonad. Which ones are your gonads? Both of them together are gonadal. So gonadotropin releasing hormone means I'm releasing my gonads. That comes out wrong. Right. Be free! Yes. So these are releasing hormones that tell my tropic hormones that you want them to go. Can anyone guess where they're made? Where do you make releasing hormones? Hypothalamus. Very good. So these are made by the hypothalamus to tell the pituitary what your brain wants it to do. So I'm going to show you an overhead here. Last one of the night, basically. Showing you this concept of the releasing and the tropic and all that. Let's see if I can manage. There, okay. Here's my anterior pituitary. It's going to make tropic hormones. Tropic hormones go to other glands. So TSH, ACTH, those are ones that are going to go to other glands and make them do their job. So those are the tropic hormones produced by the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is told to release them with these hormones. Those are made by the hypothalamus. So your brain says, give me thyroid. And then the pituitary says, okay, I'll give you thyroid. And then you get thyroid. So it's a chain of command where the hypothalamus is ordering the pituitary to order the thyroid to do something. All right? So releasings, tropics, and bi. So put them all together. Ignore the dashed lines. That'll be next time. There's the pattern of how this works. So brain to pituitary, pituitary to body. Between tropic and releasing. Make sense? So you have to know which ones are which. Make sense? Okay, memorize that chart by next week.